So I got hundreds of no's every single week. Literally, it was hurtful. I literally felt like I came home with the beating every week. I'm like, oh my God, like you just have to wake up and ignore the no's and ignore the noise.
People don't realize the power of podcasting, of meeting people, of asking questions. For me, it's just been the gift that keeps on giving. And when someone has asked me the question, if you had all the money in the world, what would you be doing? And I say, podcasting.
Because I see the back end of happiness. And I think that often in society, we say that growth is the way to happiness and success. And I see on the other side that a lot of folks get to 1 million to 5 million in revenue and only have a handful of employees. And sometimes they've scaled to 100 employees and pulled it back down to under 10, and they're the happiest.
In a world where you get 100 DMs a day, being able to talk, even if it's 1 minute with someone, is extremely powerful. Jason Hill didn't just raise a round, he raised his standards. From cold calling insurance leads to hosting a national syndicated podcast and then launching Owwll, which is a platform built on monetizing access, Jason turned client work into content, content into credibility, and credibility into capital. This episode isn't about hype. It's about systems and how you build an ecosystem that pays you back. I am incredibly honored. Thank you for being here, Jason.
For having me on. I'm excited to share a little bit about my journey creating Owwll and just life in general.
I appreciate that immensely because I think people don't know what it takes. People want to hear your story, and I appreciate you being in your office, in your natural space, so that people can see what it takes, you know. So let's start in early days. You started in finance. What did that industry teach you about trust and money and how they really move together?
Yeah, you mentioned in the office, I'm a normal person, right? Like I have normal items here, got a family, right? And sometimes on social media, it's too faked, right? We see, just the one picture looking at a screen, but I'm one of those people. I run around my office all day. I got a headset. I talk to people all the time. And everything's built on systems and trust and relationships. So my early days were New York City. I was raised in a town called Port Washington on the waterfront. Got to go boating all the time, sailing, fishing with my father. And my early days were going to the South Street Seaport, watching my father run his business called Captain Hooks, and pretty much learned entrepreneurship through my father's eyes, and pretty much got pulled into garage sales, flea markets, learned how to communicate with folks. And then I jumped into New York City after college into the financial service arena, had to build a clientele from scratch, had 0 clients. And no one really wants to trust a 22, 23-year-old out of college with their money and their insurance products and really, listen to why your advice is the right way. Right? You're like, you don't know anything about life at 22, 23, but you know something? I figured it out. I took one step at a time, and I learned so much those early years from others, and I was really consistent.
What kept you in the grind? I understand the rejection point of 22. You're fresh out of college. You think you know something, you learn something, and you want to teach it to someone that's older. What were those early failures that you thought, I'm going to quit? Or what kept you driving? Like, I'm going to keep doing this until I get it right.
I think we have to normalize that, like wanting to quit is okay. Like I wanted to quit so many times my first 12 months in the financial service business. It is so hard, right? When you're in your 20s, I think the stat is like 1% to 4% of advisors are making it today, or in general financial services. It's just so difficult to meet new people, put yourself out there, during lunch sessions at someone's office and giving a presentation about finances, or running to a hospital and talking to doctors who just really want to have lunch and not really learn about financial service products. And it's normal to want to quit. I want to quit so many times, but I just kept on going into the office, being consistent, because I saw other successful people that were in my shoes. And I'm like, if they were able to do this, if they were able to overcome all those difficult days, I'm like, I have to be able to do that as well. So I got hundreds of no's every single week. Literally, it was hurtful. I literally felt like I came home with the beating every week. I'm like, oh my God, like I call this person after they told me they wanted to sit down with me, and then they screamed at me on the phone. I'm like, you're the one that said you wanted to sit down with me. We met in person at an event. You filled out. Please contact me. And you just have to wake up and and ignore the no's and ignore the noise. And I still practice that today. I have a sticker on my computer that says opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one and they all stink. And it's just to remind me that we're all human. It doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or you're homeless, right? Like, just like it's about, having fun in life and enjoying the journey. So I've just learned to ignore noise over time.
I like how you highlighted and mentioned that you had other people to look up to and other people that had done it. And you said, oh, if they did it, I could also do it. What was that? How important were those mentors, if you want to call them, or those examples for you? And how did they help you go to the next level?
Yeah, my first ultimate mentor was my father. Watching my father own a mom and pop store in New York City that was built off of the back of a relationship. He walked over to someone and said, hey, I have this little business in Port Washington that was more of a hobby. And then that person said, well, we're building out the South Street Seaport. I think your store would fit in. So it was instilled in me at a young age how important relationships were in my family's life. And I always saw my dad just, walking over to people with no agenda and just being a nice individual and it opening up opportunities for his business. So my father was my ultimate mentor in general, and then over time, I learned from my own family. My brother, my sister were in the financial service arena. Watching them go through it before I was the youngest, so I learned from them. And then others you see that are successful financial advisors that I realize, I'm like, what are they doing that I could learn from and make it better, right? I took traits from all these amazing financial advisors and I made it my own. And then I continued down that pathway. Like today with Owwll, I built a platform where 99.5% of apps fail, right? Marketplaces are rarely known to be really great when they succeed, but also no one talks about the 99.5% of them that hit the app store and get under 500 downloads and never make it really to the market in general because they're so difficult to build and they're so difficult to really market to get to those consumers to have that journey, that experience that the founder really wants people to have. So I've just learned to ask a lot of questions and try to find the right mentors, right? So many people give you advice. They can't help themselves, but often you have to be careful. Not all advice is the correct advice, especially with mobile apps, right? Everyone tells you to build this feature, build that feature. And then before you know it, you've burned through $100,000 features that don't matter that much to scaling your app at that time. So I've learned a whole lot building a mobile app. I mean, I go on for hours about the mistakes that I've made building Owwll. And maybe sometimes it's a good thing because you've learned so much through those experiences. And now a stronger founder that I won't make those mistakes in the future when there's bigger dollars around, of course.
I really want to get into Owwll, but before we get into Owwll and Shrimp Tank and all these great things that you're working on, let's talk about content a little, because I think that is pivotal to your success, at least from this side, from someone that doesn't know you, to see how many interviews, how much great things you've done. But when was that moment that you realized that content could compound faster than advice? Yeah,
that's a really good point. The compounding impact with content, podcasting, relationships. And it all started when I moved down to South Florida. When I was in New York, I was known for doing a lot of seminars and just meeting a lot of people. And it was all about creating as much activity as you can. By the end of the week, it would turn into real scheduled meetings the following week and then turn into business, right? It was a very simple funnel. I learned in finance, like starts at the top with activity and eventually, it turns into business at the bottom, which turns into revenue for your life and your family. And you create a great life for yourself, of course, and simultaneously impacting society. But when it came to the next chapter, I moved down to Florida in 2017, knowing nobody. This is an important part. I knew nobody in South Florida. People I had texted before moving down, a couple people I knew in business, but I really had no friends. I had no family down here, no contacts. And I started by going to conferences to figure out what am I going to do to grow my financial service practice, but also who I was as a person and a personal brand. And I turned to podcasting. I said, you know something? In 2017, I looked out and I said, I'm good at speaking one-on-one with people. And I see what's going on YouTube, on Instagram. TikTok wasn't around back then, really. Actually, I don't think at all back then, looking back. And pretty much I said, this is what I'm going to do. The Shrimp Tank was a franchise started in Atlanta by a top 10 financial advisor in the United States that a few billion under management. And I said, you know something, I'm buddies with him and he's telling me that this is the coolest thing he's ever started. And I went with it. So instead of trying to do it on my own, there's a very important part. I went to someone that already had close to 100 podcast episodes, and their team flew to South Florida and helped me build out our studio. And I wanted to do it in person because being that it was tied to, my financial service business, I'm like, I want to meet people in South Florida. So inevitably they trusted me and they looked at me differently than other financial service professionals in there. There's one in every block down here. My headquarters in Boca Raton. You literally see a financial service office on every single corner because there's so much wealth in Boca and South Florida in general. So I just got such a good head start. And if you look at my first 10 episodes, I was horrible, right? I was not a good podcaster back then. I was so nervous when there's a camera on you and other people sitting behind you and they're listening to every word that you're saying. It's nerve wracking. But I said to myself, I have to do this. I know it's the right thing for my growth. So I was in my lower 30s back then. I'm 41 today. And I just went with it. And it was the best thing I ever did in my life because I ended up meeting such incredible people that started such incredible businesses throughout the last 6-7 years. And now we have over 330 episodes, all done in person, which is crazy. And I have a rule, this show must go on. We'd have a guest cancel and I'd find another guest because I was paying for it. I was paying for a franchise fee. I was paying for my editor. Like people don't see what goes on behind the scenes, that if you get a guest that cancels and you're a live show, like you just lost, money because you got to pay these people still regardless. They showed up to do an episode. I have a lot of processes built into the podcast show, The Shrimp Tank, and I now am the proud owner of The Shrimp Tank. The franchise pretty much kind of got weakened during COVID because you can't really run an in-person show in California and Oregon during the COVID days. So those cities shut down. And then I had my opportunity to buy the franchise out, and now I am the only city. So the Shrimp Tank is purely my own at this point. And now we're featuring entrepreneurs all over the United States. We have people that fly in, and we do it with the Florida Atlantic University with the entire class of FAU students. How cool is this? They come into our studio, and I welcome you to join us, of course, and feature you as, and learn about your journey, of course. The students come up and ask questions during a live show, and it's part of their curriculum. So we are the only show that I'm aware of in the world that has something like this going on. But it took practice. It took getting to 100 episodes, then 200 episodes, failing with technology and streaming and forgetting to hit the record button and having to tell your guests like, we have a problem here, and just, learning and also pivoting. I think podcasting has changed so much. And I said to my co-host, I'm like, we're like everybody else right now. What are we going to do different? I'm like, can we use your class of FAU students and get them to sit in this movie theater room that no one's using at FAU? And we pulled it off. A year and a half ago, we had this genius idea. Somehow the university allowed it. And now we have one of the coolest studios in the world. So I know it was a long story about the journey of Shrimp Tank, but it's a very important part of my journey of even creating Owwll, why I had that confidence and those relationships.
I thank you so much for sharing, because I agree with you. I think people don't realize the power of podcasting, of meeting people, of asking questions. For me, it's just been the gift that keeps on giving. And when someone has asked me the question, if you had all the money in the world, what would you be doing? And I say, podcasting. That's the best. It's the best. It's the most rewarding thing you could do. Not only because it allowed you to, like you said, meet leaders in the industry, meet people around you, meet people, interesting people, ask them questions that you wanted to, let them see you in a different light. But at the same time, it's like having a masterclass every single day with someone that teaches you how to get further along. And your journey is definitely a unique one. And after interviewing 300 plus entrepreneurs, doing this collaboration with the university, what pattern have you seen between those who grow and those who stall?
It's a great question, because often you see a successful entrepreneur, then they start going sideways. You see no growth and also failure. You see them go and then come straight down, and then it's hard to repeat. So a common trend that I see is just thinking outside the box, right? Always reinventing themselves, creating new distribution channels. And it's usually correlated back to their original business. The very successful folks I've noticed, like they don't go from, one extreme to another like me, right? Like I'm financial advisor to mobile app. You don't see that as frequent, but you do see, like our episode we just had with Norman Love Confections, right? You're starting to see them opening brick and mortar stores, right? Where in the past they did more direct to consumer online, as an example. So you see pivots. You see as their revenue is going sideways, you see them reinventing, hiring new people, having fresh blood in the office creates new ideas, and of course, social media, right? A lot of brands scale because they're leveraging social media and new AI technology and different processes to their business versus the business that does well. They get up to $1 million to $5 million of revenue, and then you just see it become a lifestyle business, which is okay, very important. I think that when we look at happiness and the people that I meet all the time in the financial service world, because I see the back end of happiness. And I think that often society, we say that growth is the way to happiness and success. And I see on the other side that a lot of folks get to 1 million to 5 million of revenue and only have a handful of employees. And sometimes they've scaled to 100 employees and pulled it back down to under 10, and they're the happiest. They're not dealing with people all the time, putting out fires all the time, and technology always failing and always coming to their rescue. So I think that you have to do what's right for you. Some people really enjoy that lifestyle business and being able to be home on the weekends with their family and go boating 6 o'clock in Florida and, and not have to worry about checking emails at 8, 9 o'clock at night. Right. And I have others that they can't do that. Right. They love that adrenaline rush of the next goal, the next achievement. And I think that everyone can do it their own way. I don't think there's one right way as an entrepreneur.
I'm going to highlight something you said in the previous question, which is it stuck with me this whole time, which is you looked at other podcasts and you said, we're like everybody else. How can we be different? And I see that in businesses as well. When people question themselves and reinvent themselves and change and are not afraid of going outside their box. And now let's go into Owwll, because I think that you went from financial services to podcasting and then launching an app. And you said it at the beginning, launching an app seems 2010, 2015, like everybody was the app craze. Like there's an app for that was a movement. You came into an incredibly competitive space, an incredibly expensive place to launch. So how did you validate the idea? And what did the MVP actually mean to you?
Yeah, I was bored. I know this might sound interesting, but I was during COVID and I was coming to an office all by myself. All my staff was working from home and I was sitting there bored to death. And I was driving to the office because financial services were allowed to go to the office during those early days when everyone else was told to stay at home. And I was like, this makes no sense. I'm driving to my office and I have a phone with hundreds of contacts, hundreds of people I've had on my podcast. And I'm like, I can't call anybody. No one picks up the phone anymore. And I'm like, this makes no sense. Everyone's on their couch and craving conversation. So that was when the light bulb moment went off. I have always been a driver and a speaker. I've always called people on the run. I listen to music, I listen to podcasts, but sometimes I just like getting those calls out of the way. I call my mother, call my brother, call my sister during drives. My wife these days, like we always talk on my way to work. And in general, I was like, why is there a tool out there that enables me to talk and network on the fly, like on the go? Right? We're all in our car. We're all in bumper to bumper traffic when I was in New York City all the time, driving to meetings. I'm like, but how is there no app these days that enables me to just, call friends, call colleagues, call people I just met at an event a week ago. And I just felt like everything's moved to DMing on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I'm like, hey, yeah, maybe let's get together in like 2-3 weeks, but we're losing all those relationships in our phone Rolodex. So that's when the aha moment like clicked. I'm like, wouldn't this be cool? And that's what the concept was, just like being able to call someone in real time. That was all I knew I wanted, and to network. That was it. And then it just started with hiring a brand that was on the shrimp tank, Oz Digital Consulting. The son was in my networking group, and he always talked about technology in our networking group. And like, hey, I got this idea. I was like, can I build an app that like we call each other without having each other's cell phone numbers? And he's like, maybe, let me get back to you. Talk to his father, talk to some developers at his company, and they just explain the process. You have to spend 2 weeks to 6 weeks with developers and create wireframes and the MVP on paper. Look at the competitive landscape, and that will cost at some places like $1,000 to $3,000, some places $10,000, some places $100,000. It just depends on how elaborate you want your MVP to be on paper. So I spent under $10,000. Right out of the gate, that was a big expense, right? And most people wouldn't. They'd be like, they'd stop right there, like at a few thousand, right? Like it's a good idea, but I don't want to start. I was bored, so I was like, let's do it. I've never done anything like this. I always hear the word MVP on my podcast. I'm like, I don't know all these acronyms that all these tech folks speak about, and I just said, let's run with them. By myself in an office, and literally, like, I'm on a call with like 6, 7 developers. It was hilarious. They're like, what are we doing? And I was like, I don't know. Like, and literally, like most people, like they're working with companies like Royal Caribbean, Carnival Cruise Line. They do stuff with the Hard Rock. They have like teams that have like vision. My vision was like, I don't know, I just want to be able to call people through an app. And literally that's how it started on day one. To like day 3, they're like, we need a name. And I'm like going on GoDaddy, searching names. I'm like, Owwll, Bird of Wisdom and Intelligence. Go to GoDaddy. Oh, it's obviously not available. OWL. I'm like, let's put an extra W and extra L in there. I'm like, names with less than 8 characters do the best with mobile apps. And I was like, let's go with it. And I also had experience. I failed with naming my first brand, Client Focused Advisors. Too long. Want something shorter that fits in social media boxes and circles. At that point, we got the name. And it was just like one screen at a time, to the point where 4 weeks went by. We knew the competitors. Then it was like, hey, it's going to cost you $200,000-300,000 to build. And I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this. Right? This was fun. It looks amazing. I'm showing people PDFs, and they're like, that is a sick idea. But really, like, no one's putting up money with a bunch of PDFs and wireframes and images. At that point, you have to make a gut decision. It's all into it. At that point, I looked at my finances. I'm 41 today. So this was 4 or 5 years ago, right in my upper 30s. And I saved a lot of money in my IRAs, investment properties, and I had a very stable business, recurring revenue on the wealth management side. And I said, something, if I'm gonna go for it, it's now. Yeah, my kids are young. You're always gonna have more reasons. I've watched client after client say, tomorrow I'm going to do this. Tomorrow I'm going to travel. Tomorrow I'm going to rent that boat. Tomorrow I'm going to do that. And I've always been a risk taker. I love online poker. I love gambling, but gambling with the right risks. I've always been a poker player where the edge is in my favor. I've always been, because it's my calculated odds when making a decision, not, games like craps, blackjack. That was always aware to me that, I'd probably lose. But in general, so I calculated that 99.5% of apps fail, but let's pull back the onion, right? They fail because of money, right? They build an app thinking that they're going to go to you and say, hey, I got this great idea, and here's my pitch deck. Give me $1 million to $5 million so we could build this thing. You're going to say no, right? You're in the investment world. You're like, you see pitch deck after pitch, you're like, no, I'm not trusting someone who's never built an app, unless they're on round 2, maybe, right? And even round 2, still, you want to see it in the marketplace and seeing some of the data, some of the revenue, some of the traction. So in my case, I'm like, I'm going to have to bootstrap this thing, right? So right off the bat, I had the money, in cash to build the original MVP, but I knew, I'm like, okay, well, what about maintaining the app? Very big expense. You have to be very careful. And I'm like, why do all these apps fail? They build just enough and then hope to raise capital. That's a huge failure model. My advice to anyone out there building an app, if you don't have runway, don't do it. If you have a second job and you don't have time to put in, 30, 40 hours a week into the app because you're working as a realtor right now and you have to get those commissions to make a living, you're just not going to be able to have the time to maintain it and really work with the developers while marketing. Marketing is everything in those first, 90 days or a year. Yes, there's apps that take off, super user-friendly, and just work. Right. But like most don't. Most you need a robust marketing strategy. Even though you're solving a problem, it doesn't matter. All these apps solve problems. The whole model, on pitch decks is broken. That's my 2 cents. Everyone's like, solve a problem, raise capital. No, because you have a million apps that are solving a million problems, but it doesn't matter. People have tech fatigue. They don't want to download another app. They don't want to sign up for another course, another website, another profile. It doesn't matter. You need a robust marketing strategy. And thankfully, I guess you could say I went in over my head. That's the truth. I went in saying, well, I have all these relationships, so one day raising capital will be easy. One day getting people to download your app will be easy because I have all these relationships. Nope. It was like I was in my first year in financial services. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life then. Hardest thing I ever done in my life, my first 500 downloads. Hardest thing, texting friends, family, and watching them not download my app that I, looked at as my baby. I'm like, how could you not? How could you not just hit the download button in the App Store? It takes you 1 minute, 12 texts. And then you start realizing who your real friends are real quick. That wouldn't take 1 minute out of their day to download an app. Or one of your podcast guests, same thing. That wouldn't. You help put them, out there with the podcast show, tell their story. Hey, they're up on your website. Not 1 minute to download your app, right? They're too busy. They're too busy to help support your mission. But you were there to help support theirs. So you learn real quick. It's really difficult. And I just learned so much those first 6 months of launching the app in the App Store. You have to be careful. Negative reviews don't go away, or hard to get them to take it off. They're really quick to roast you on the internet today. And it's been a long journey. We launched June of 2022, and you need more features. The truth is like you're up against apps like TikTok and LinkedIn and very big platforms that have the best developers in the world, and they put a lot of money into their development and how they eliminate friction and make it a very thought out process, a user-friendly process. And when you're a startup, very difficult because people want the best always. They're used to Amazon, one click and it's at their door. So thankfully, just the relationships matter, right? I'm a big believer in that. Maybe one day that will be our slogan. It's probably taken somewhere, of course, but just like one relationship at a time, I built people to come into the app, experience the journey, and now we're proud to be approaching 10,000 profiles on the app. So it's a huge milestone, of course, to get to 10,000. And our next journey is to explode the app to 100,000 people, then 1 million. And I'm proud to say that one thing no one is aware of that's happening behind the scenes in the app is we just got back a survey from Florida Atlantic University students that were required to use the app, and it's blowing us away, the data. That students don't use the phone to communicate, but when we help them, with Owwll, because it has correct boundaries, that they're realizing the importance of networking and relationships through the app, and how it's helping them overcome anxiety when calling a stranger, and it potentially will lower depression rates over time because they're connecting with other humans, of course. So the study just came back, and our goal is to now put that into multiple classrooms, and the professor we're working with is building out a 30-page case study with co-authors and other professors. So I'm proud that, right now that Owwll is working with a lot of LinkedIn users, like the 35 to 60-year-old crowd in business wanting to collaborate and network, but we're going to pull in the whole younger generation by making it part of the curriculums, which could make a major impact to society.
You really showcase what it takes. And I appreciate how you said, even when you gave so much, when you asked, it wasn't there. And that's the journey of every entrepreneur. At the beginning, your friends, your family will not buy your product. And some people get heartbroken. Some people get angry. Some people don't understand. But when you get to the 1 million mark, all of your friends that didn't, they'll say, "Oh, he's my friend." They'll come back and be like, "Oh, I knew it in the early days. I talked to everybody about it." They'll take credit. It's a funny journey to be an entrepreneur. What is your favorite story that comes from Owwll? What is something that you're extremely proud of, aside from getting it to 10,000, aside from those metrics, something that you said, I never realized what I was working on until this happened?
Yeah, I mean, the favorite story is the first call, actually. Like I would always have to plan meetings, meaning like I would message you on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, I really would love you to try out my app." I was like, "Can you download it? And then let's schedule a time and I'm going to call you on the app." Right. So it was really not working. A marketplace like Owwll is where there's someone available to call, and they're setting the price at a rate of like $1 or $10, as an example, for a 10-minute conversation. And then conversations go longer once you're on a call. You could ask for more time with that expert. And in the early days, you need two sides. You need someone to go available, and you need someone to look into the app and call them, right? And also want to pay, right? And get access to that individual to connect and collaborate. And it was hard in those early days. Every call was staged. I'm like, how am I going to get this like off the ground to really like see like two people go available and then call each other? And I'm laying in bed, and it was 11 o'clock at night, and like we're already a year deep into this project, a year building the app, and me doing all these demo calls, but not being able to get people to actually just do it on their own. And I just saw like two people available on the app with a little green dot, like LinkedIn, right? So they're available. And I see them both shift to red dot, meaning they're on a call. And it was like, I'm in bed. I'm like, we got it. It's working. I connected two people to have a conversation through the technology. So that was like the moment, like a year into working on this project, just like, oh, it's working. And just seeing like they each left a review for each other and it goes up publicly listed on their profile. Had a great call with Rebecca. She is fantastic. And it's actually Rebecca who built, who was one of our OGs on the app. And she put us part of her book program for unhappiness here. And it was cool to be part of her book. She's been part of the journey from day one, but she was that first caller. So it's just like those tingles to see, like, if I can impact 2 people, what's going to happen when you impact 10, 100? And now we're proud to say, we're averaging about, 1,000 to 1,500 calls per month through hundreds of people per month. So, it's like these stories are starting to brew. You go on LinkedIn and you search Owwll. We had I'll tell you a recent story. A 16-year-old downloaded this app, just curious, and he calls somebody, and this individual owns a networking brand in California, and he does a lot of things for celebrities, as they, open up a movie and they do a red carpet theme, and pretty much he's like, hey, do you and your father want to come tomorrow? And him and his father run a nonprofit helping the homeless. And how crazy a story is this? They book a flight that same day, fly to California the following, and they walk that red carpet. That 16-year-old literally created a video saying, I had a life-changing experience in my life, because he wants to get into Hollywood. He wants to do more around helping the homeless and his nonprofit. And his father said, this is a great opportunity, right? $1,000, $2,000 probably costs, right, per flight and hotel room. But how cool is this that, hey, this person said, you want to come out? Sure. Like, you're 16 years old. Like, I want to help the next generation. And the app supported that through a one-on-one conversation. That's all it is. It's very simple in life. The more people that have one-on-one conversations, the more opportunities will be unlocked. I think people, confuse our technology. Like, they're like, there's profiles, I have to click to pay, and why would I want to use this app? Like, I don't need advice from that person, or I wouldn't want to call that. It's like, this isn't rocket science. Go into the app, call someone that looks interesting, and see where the conversation goes. And often you will be left with opportunities, because if you speak to 10 people in a week, there's going to be someone you connect well with, and you'll jump on their podcast show. They'll jump on your show. They'll invite you to an in-person event. Be invited as a speaker at their event. It's just endless opportunities that could be created through the technology. And you just never know who's going to call you. You get random calls all the time, and it opens up things. And I think in society, we've moved so far from that, right? The old days, you used to open up your front door when the doorbell rang, and it was exciting. Now you're like check the ring. Who's at the door, right? What's going on? Or a phone call's coming, and like, yeah, I'll let it go to voicemail, just to see what they were going to say. Like, you don't want to be shocked what they were going to say. We're like, yeah, let it go to voicemail, then I'll call them back. And I just think that there's something so nice about Owwll that it protects the user's data, right? All apps are in through the app itself, no cell phone being used. You don't have to provide your information to the end user unless you want to. And you get to hold everyone accountable because there's a review mechanism in place, kind of like Fiverr works. You review someone after they built something for you, and you hold them accountable. And I just think there's something there that, this is going to unlock millions of opportunities for people in a controlled environment to make them feel protected. And I think that's missing in society. I think we've gone so far due to ChatGPT and AI, and it's only getting worse. So I think this is like giving people like that breath of fresh air, like, oh, great, I can speak to people again.
You definitely made me a believer.
Thank you.
At the beginning, when you were telling me about Owwll and I researched Owwll, I said, I don't really understand. Now that you explain it, I see the gap in the market. I absolutely agree with you that in a world where you get 100 DMs a day, 100 emails or thousands of emails a day, being able to talk, even if it's 1 minute with someone, is extremely powerful. And I live under the assumption or the principle that you can learn something from everybody. And everybody has something that they can give you value. And the ability to have those one-on-ones, I think it's the most value you can get out of someone. If you look at someone's, all other social medias provide you with so much data and so much information that it's not filtered to you. It's not filtered to the moment. You made me a believer. I think it's incredibly powerful what you're doing. Let's talk about something that I'm curious, because I find people who do various companies, various things. You run a podcast, you have a fintech app and a calling app, an advisory firm as well.
Yeah.
How do you structure your week to keep relevant in all three? And how do you keep your mental bandwidth in each of them?
It's hard, right? Right off the bat. It's taken a toll on me the last couple of years, right? I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat that running those three items have been easy, right? And I'll break down each one so that way everyone really gets a full understanding of what it takes to run all three, right? Shrimp tank right here, really simple, right? It's an hour and a half to 2 hours out of my work week. I go to the Florida Atlantic University 5 minutes down the road, and I sit in the hot seat and I'm a host. And then afterwards talk to the students and the guests for 15, 20 minutes afterwards, because it's a great conversation, great high after a show, right? But very important, I'm not doing anything behind the scenes on Shrimp Tank. I have a full-time editor and a full-time producer. So it costs me a lot of money to have those two people in place. But Ready, we are so systematized, right? Literally, like, someone comes on our show, their episode is up on our website within 7 days, right? And we're on to the next episode. The social media posts out to the guests, all communication ran by our producer, and pretty much the communication runs through one person and gets their bio, their headshot, their testimonial release, right? And all that is systems. But very important, I learned that from the original franchise. So I got ahead of the curve by jumping to the front of the line, by spending money. Too often entrepreneurs want to spend less. You want to spend more and get to the front of the line quicker so you're not making as many mistakes, right? So I'm a big believer in spending money to getting ahead. I mean, my app literally showcases that. Spend money, call someone, jump the line, get access. All right. So in general, podcasting just is all systems. And so often I watch podcaster after podcast fail, right? Because they try to edit. They're like, oh, I'm a better editor. Then they try to do everything, social media posts. Before you know it, your podcast takes you 20 hours a week, right? And it's crazy because most podcasts don't make money. Actually, 99% of them don't make money. Shrimp Tank, newsflash, doesn't make money. For years, we lost, I won't say the number, but thousands and thousands of dollars on those two people, right? And my time that could have been spent to other things, but I didn't look at it like that. My time is the best value of my time. I built relationship after relationship with very successful entrepreneurs. That's a compounding effect that you brought up earlier, right? How many entrepreneurs I have in my cell phone that I could call and text that respect me now because, I put them in this spotlight at FAU, right? So right off the bat, systems are everything. And they all started, you are correct, in my wealth management business, right? So in my 20s, I was the first one to adapt, really utilizing CRM technology. We're talking like 2008, 2009, right? CRMs were being used, but they were used as like storage facilities or like your documents. And time after time, I watch every financial advisor using it wrong, right? Using it, saying, oh yeah, I have one, my assistant uses it. I'm like, no, you need to use it, right? You need to log in every day. You need to log every appointment. So I got really good at that. I spoke in front of 500 financial advisors at the age of 27, teaching them how to leverage CRM technology and like social media back then, like how to post on LinkedIn and how to DM people and get meetings. I got really big into LinkedIn back then, where you could DM people and produce a meeting, and others weren't really using it as much back then. Back then it was post and hope a meeting came through. And I was like, no, just DM people, all the time and connect with folks. So I got good at systems because of the wealth management business. I learned from others, right? I didn't start this. Like, wealth management been around forever, right? Wealth management, financial services, like, produce more millionaires than any other industry statistically, right? So I learned by going to conferences and keep learning by taking their technology, putting it into my business. But very important is those processes moved over to the podcasts, and then it moved over to Owwll. And that's why even the money mechanisms on Owwll work the way it is. I watch so many competitors do it wrong, right? You're an expert on another app. I pay you. Your money goes off the app. Like, that's great. Now you have no incentive to call other people because your money's already off the app. It's in your bank account. We built the digital wallet. So now when I call you and you got $50 in your account, you're not sitting here caring about $50, but now all of a sudden you see someone that you always want to talk to and they're like $20. You're not thinking twice. You're calling the person. Like, yeah, I just made 50, I'll pay 20. Who cares? So very important. I took my skill set from wealth management and it's part and ingrained into Owwll, right? So I learned a lot of people would have failed with a mobile app with real money because they wouldn't have been ready for the scams that were about to hit them, how to bonus people the proper way to like have an expiration date on a bonus because you're going to hold yourself out. They're giving away too much money. So we are a lot further ahead than our competitors due to my experiences on wealth management, to be honest. So when I see our competitors, I'm like, this is great. You got great data, but you're missing the boat. You didn't build the digital wallet the correct way. And they know it too, because then when I really get into meetings with CTOs, then they're like, we need to build that, right? Because they don't know how. They're not in the money business. They're in the development business. That being said, Owwll, has more process than anything, right? You're talking about someone on boards, getting an email, getting a text message, getting an onboarding journey, and reminders if money is expiring, right? Thankfully, we have a robust group of developers that put the pressure on me, like, hey, this is what we're building, and then I have to get feedback. So for 4 years straight, I've been on a call Monday through Friday, 8:30 in the morning, 5 minutes to 15 minutes, every single Monday through Friday. So most people would have broke, right? But for me, it was a system. I was driving to work every day around that time. So I was taking the calls every morning. So it's easy. I'm not doing anything. So my system is built on purpose on my commutes. And then when I get to my office, it's like everything is scheduled. All my meetings are in my calendar, and just making sure that I'm pushing off all the $10 to $20 hour work. Very important thing that I learned in wealth management is everyone would get up on stage and be like, who makes over $100,000 in the room, right? Raise your hand. And a lot in wealth management. Be like, then why the F are you still doing applications, this, that? Be like, take your amount of money you made last year, divide it out. That's what you make per hour, right? And then stop doing all this other work. Hire someone. So I always hired co-callers. I always hired team members to take all the stuff I hated in wealth management. I hated calling people after I met people because you get like 30 calls done and one person pick up, and then someone was rude to you. But when it's not you calling, like when someone's like, hey, I'm calling on behalf of Jason L. You met him at a seminar last week. You wanted to set up the meeting for you. Like, and they get hung up on, they don't care. It's not emotional then. They're like, yeah, that person was rude next, right? They were just leaving voice messages. It was easy. I hired a lot of college students to do it 10 hours a week because I knew that no one wanted to do that 40 hours a week. So I just learned, like, get all the crappy work out of your schedule. And because of that, people in your shoes and other shoes are always like, how the hell am I seeing you post on your personal LinkedIn, your personal pages on social media, then your company pages, Owwll app, Shrimp Tank. You have a dedicated website for Shrimp Tank. Every week, how did you get to 330 episodes on the Shrimp Tank? Then I run 2 other podcasts, Tech Tuesdays, Southflorida Tech Up, right? They bring one of their members to our local office studio in my own office, and that's all fully produced by our producer as well, right? Then now we're running Funding Fridays, initiative. Ready for this? Be creative with raising capital, right? If I go to all these pitch competitions, there's not really credible investors in the crowd often, right? They're not investing in mobile app. They're investing in other things, but not mobile apps, right? And I'm aware of that. I'm like, I'm just spinning my wheels, and I want to go places where I'm not spinning my wheels. So, sending pitch deck out to thousands of folks, like, it's just the wrong people often. So what did I do? I like, what am I good at? Podcasting, right? Really cool part of the story. I was like, well, why don't I look at apps like Clubhouse? What was the most successful rooms in Clubhouse? The Pitch Room. What's one of the main famous shows on television? Shark Tank, right? Startups need to get access to investors. My app, we could have a group, Funding Fridays, every week. Investors are able to join that group, and every other individual that wants to pay the price to get access to them can call them. So right off the bat, the app works, right, with that philosophy because it worked on Clubhouse. But how do I really push this initiative? Let me partner with a venture capitalist that knows everybody in the investment space and say, want my office for free? Want to bring in people once a month and have people call in live through a podcast show, but they're really calling you through the Owwll app to get into the show. I figured out the wiring that phone call through Owwll could get through to a podcast. A lot of hiccups could occur with that, as you know. They have. But ready for this? Now we have our 3rd episode this Friday. And how unique is this? That I already get DMs. This show is genius because it's no different than Shark Tank, but live and authentic and raw, no editing. And we're giving people a channel to get through to investors. So I see this as a huge initiative, but what's going to happen is people are going to like, wait, Jason, this is a great concept. Wait, why haven't you raised capital? You understand where I'm going with this. It's just like the Shrimp Tank. I'm going to have eventually by the end of 25, 30 to 40 different types of investors that walk through the front doors of my office and now respect me and want to help me. And they see the initiative with Funding Fridays, but you know what they're also going to see? The initiative with Florida Link University that this app is having. And then at that point, it's not going to matter about our traction. It's not going to be about like, hey, your data doesn't look great right there. It's like, no, this has the ability to impact millions of students' lives plus others in general. And it's even working just for the funding space alone. So I'm just backdooring a raise in a very unique way to think outside the box. So again, going back to like following the herd, the lead on podcasters or any business, I just think today there is so much tech fatigue. You have to think so outside the box to be unique. So that's my way. Me not caring about having 1 million followers on Instagram. It's great if I get there. It's 1 million followers on TikTok. Great if I get there, but I don't care. If I get there, I get there. But I know, like, if I work all my other verticals that I'm talking about now, will work for me in different ways, right? Than the packs that are just solely focused on social media, right? As an example.
You redefine the word leverage. You just mentioned how, the only way to get a shortcut is to leverage money, leverage people, leverage expertise of others. This is how you've gotten to where you are. And I think it's incredible that you're able to do 3 podcasts, that you're able to do a collaboration with a university, do a startup, have your wealth management business, and still say, hey, I would do this any other day, and I'm still leveling up. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs miss. I'm with my podcast, I'm only the guy on the camera and the guy that researches and does the questions. That's it. Because at the beginning, when I was doing the guy on the camera, researching the question, editing, cutting the clips, posting the clips, doing comments, cold calling or DMing people so that they come on the podcast, I felt so much fatigue. And then I was like, okay, now, and like you said, you're not even making money. So you're taking so much on your plate. It's like, just have the steak, and then you don't need all this other stuff around it. But go for what you like. I loved it. Very, very powerful.
And important, I was going to add to this, you open up a lot of things sometimes and you got to learn to close those doors, right? So I've opened up other podcast shows and it wasn't working out. I've closed those doors. And very important is like certain verticals aren't working that great that you put a lot of effort into. And you sometimes have to like, it's going to be hard. I spent so much hours and time and just shut it. And people, you have to disappoint people. So this isn't working out the way I expected, and close the door. So as much as it's been fun to create a lot of stuff and go down different verticals, you have to also know when it's time to just say, hey, next chapter, next marketing, move, because it's not worth your time anymore because tech changes.
I would refute to that yes, it's important to say no, but I think it's more important what you've done is to give yourself the chance. You gave yourself the opportunity to do one, do, and then 3 stuck.
Of course. That's my famous quote is my father used to take me around to garage sales and flea market and say, you go, you get. Very simple quote. But the point is, like, I went out with him in the early hours at like 6 a.m. in the morning to beat the Florida heat. We used to travel to Florida all the time, and they had the best garage sales for some odd reason. And we would wake up early, and I would just come home with fun stuff like baseball cards, comic books, race remote control cars. But a lot of stuff was worth a lot of money back then, when I was like 7 to 10 years old. And it still is that same theme in my businesses is you go, you get, right? And the point of Owwll is stop worrying so much, make a phone call, and just, you never know what will come out on the other side. And I think that social media, and you brought up a very important part, tells you to say no to everything. It's actually easier to say no to everything. Like, hey, you want to do this, that event? No, that event stinks. Oh, you want to go to that event? No, that event, I hate that person doing that. It's going to be horrible, right? And you just see so many people saying no to everything because so many very successful people have said, it's very important to say no to things. Like, yeah, once you're busy, right? And you have 100 million meetings in your schedule, but not when you're not busy. You're not busy. You should be saying yes to everything and then opening up those doors and see where they lead, of course. So I think that is one of the most important things on my success is I've put myself out there more than 99% of people, which has then blossomed a lot of these opportunities.
100%. And actually you're answering questions before I even ask them. So there's a funny thing happening that I was going to say, like, what was the one thing that made you, or skill that got you where you are? And you just answered that by saying, if you go, you get. That's a great quote. What is something you're doing now, something that you're doing now that no one is seeing? Let's say, take this as an announcement. What is something that you're working on right now that not a lot of people know?
A brand spokesperson. So I made the decision when I look to scale Owwll. Right now we're seeing the typical chicken and egg problem, right? Everyone understands it once they're in the app and they've taken or made a call. Once you've completed that step, you're like, I get this app. I'm always going to want to use it in the future because I could have a day where I just need to call an expert in technology and just pick their brain. I have a day where, a podcast guest got canceled and I need to find a new guest in real time right now. Everyone sees the value, right? That's the simplest part of this subject. But the issue is always going to be having enough volume and momentum in the app of people that are of quality that you could open up this app on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, the slowest days, at 10 o'clock at night, and be able to be like, I would speak to 25 people in this app right now, right? Like it needs to have that much value. So what I've taken kind of a turn in 2025 is to find a spokesperson for the brand. and it could be multiple. I just put, start of every year, I just put my goals down on my business. Like, we're going sideways. Like we went sideways all in 2024, to be blunt, right? And it's okay. I can admit it, right? It is what it is. Go look at my app. You can see the call volume. It's working, but why are we not growing, right? People in, people out, right? And then you make updates with features, but the features take like 3 months to 6 months to build sometimes. And you keep thinking the feature is going to fix your problem, and it fixes some of the problems. Your data gets a little better, but it gets a little better, and then you go start going sideways again, right? And this has been a consistent trend since we launched. It's like we keep going forward, back, and that's a good sign, but not good enough when you're pouring out money with developers. Unlike other technologies where you can be like, oh, you can just keep going and going. You can't with mobile apps. So I made a decision to go against the grain. Everyone's like, just raise capital and then heads and then hire influencers. It's like, yeah, that's 2010 move, right? So I made a decision, again, go against the grain. I'm going to give out equity to a spokesperson. And it's really hard to find a spokesperson because most of them want money up front and equity, right? Like think about any big celebrity, right? Their time is so valuable, right? So for them to do it for all equity is very difficult, right? Even though they see me as a founder, they might believe me, they might believe in the product, they still like, this is a huge risk, a huge chance that they can spend hours a month, and that's what we're talking, maybe 4 hours, 8 hours a month of their time, and then it goes nowhere, right? We don't raise capital. It doesn't get to, the unicorn status, right, that they need to really make a huge impact. That's what they want to do. So, but it also goes back to like, well, it's a problem. A lot of these celebrities, influencers, I'm putting my financial service out on my instant gratification. Everyone wants money up front, a quick adrenaline rush, a quick hit. No one wants to plan for their future like an IRA and a 401k, right? Like here I am telling people you got to put money away, a compound, it will be worth a lot. So I've actually just drawn up the document. Like look at other marketplaces, Airbnb, Fiverr, right? Look at these marketplaces that have, a similar patterns, recurring revenue, deposits. And I'm like, look at their valuation, when they raise capital. Look at like, the compounding effect that they have had, the impact that they have had on society. So I'm starting to just sell them, right? I'm selling them on how if they take equity of this company, this is what it will be worth one day. We're talking like 2 years, not 6 months. And then I'm saying, look at the impact that you were going to have. And I'm going to sell somebody. Somebody's going to buy into the dream because we're starting to see celebrities download the app as well. And as celebrities join in, then they're like, okay, celebrities are downloading this app right now. Professional athletes are downloading the app. Inevitably, someone's going to be like, I got an opportunity to be the first, right? Which is hard because no one wants to be the first. But the second I get that spokesperson, I get one, then 2, 3, 4 are going to be a lot easier. And then that will kind of, very similar to Shrimp Tank, build that trust, right? Because everyone downloads it and they have to make a decision on their own. But we live in a world that everyone follows the others today, right? So now when this spokesperson says, I believe in Owwll and the mission it's having, then all of a sudden your friends are like, oh my God, yeah, I loved Owwll. I always loved Owwll. I'm like, you didn't even use it once, right? Like, so I'm building the same like thing that we see on social media, the impact that follower society has, following people. And I believe that if we get some spokespeople on board, that Owwll will go from 10,000 to 100,000 because of the impact coming from their mouth. And we're talking about a spokesperson that would be a household name. 99% of people would know that have millions of followers, right? So think about, folks that would be on public stages on a regular basis. And thankfully, we're in conversation very deep with two. I can't say who they are right now. And one of them has a legal contract out right now. We're working on legal documents with our attorneys and their attorneys. And the second one, we're at the final stages of getting a yes or a no. So my answer to you is, I don't know what will happen in the next 6 months if this goes through, like what the impact will have and how that also will go through all my businesses simultaneously. The Shrimp Tank, the FAU college stuff with Owwll, what's going on, the deposits, the current user base comes back, right? That downloaded it 2 years ago, had a poor experience, but now like, wait a second, I should re-download this thing, right? Like they have a profile, they just don't use it. So we have a lot of profiles sitting there, of course. So that's what I'm really excited to work on because that's just a new energy. The like any entrepreneur, you don't know what will happen type of like journey that you're about to go on, right? Where it will take us.
It's super exciting, and I thank you for announcing it, even though it hasn't happened yet, but so close. I can't wait to see what happens because now I'm now I'm intrigued. Now I wanna download Owwll. I wanna see what it's like, and I want to definitely wish you the biggest success, because I am a believer. I do think what you're solving is a need in the market, and if you want to be impactful, one-on-one is the way. It's not.
Yeah. And of course, one-to-one can turn to one-to-many. And that's the very important part I love talking about. You have a one-on-one conversation and then get invited to an event where you're speaking in front of 1,000 people. And then you get that opportunity to speak to the many, right?
Absolutely. Jason, this has been amazing, insightful, energetic. I want to ask you the one last question. Looking back, what was a decision that looked small but changed everything?
I will bring it back to podcasting, actually, because I don't think if I started my podcast, I would ever have taken the journey with Owwll. I think putting myself, in the seat that I was in 2017, realizing that I needed to make a change for my financial service business, and that change was podcasting. That time, podcasting made me a better father. It's made me a better husband. It's made me a better, family member, brother, son, and it's made me a better human in general. The things that it put me through, like the nervousness, the anxiety of like, this is coming out. I'm nervous. Like, this is a big CEO. Like, we've had the CEO of Celsius Beverage on, Bolay, BurgerFi, like all these big brands in South Florida. And it's nerve-wracking, right? Knowing that like they're coming into your studio and you have to be on, and sometimes you're not on. Sometimes you're tired, you're exhausted. And it just has impacted me, because as I've ran through episode after episode, it has built my confidence that I can speak to anybody. Literally, like, I am not nervous. You can put me in like on a Zoom right now with Donald Trump, and I'll speak to him like a normal human, because to me, it's like we all do the same stuff. We wake up tired. We wake up and need Advil. We wake up hungry and wanting McDonald's, right? Whatever it might be, a craving. We are all normal, and we all go through medical events. We all go through losses. And I think with podcasting, it's helped me learn that. And I just realized like it's been an incredible journey having that option, the ability, the work with FAU and get this opportunity to share these stories that these entrepreneurs share with us. And because of that, it's led me to have the confidence to go after something a lot larger, which is Owwll, right? Impacting millions of people is our goal, right? And again, going back to non-rocket science, one-on-one conversations, right? Who cares about all these bells and whistles features that we build? It's like giving you access to people to speak to in real time. That's literally it. And then pretty much like having that ability to say, hey, if these entrepreneurs that are all over this wall right now, these are autographs by a lot of founders, right? One in particular that went to FAU, I'll showcase, Chipmunk. Chipmunk was a unicorn that came out. He was in his 20s, and now he's in his 30s, that raised $400 million approximately and worth billions today. And it has these huge warehouses that are size of Super Walmart, and just like did it through no experience, just kind of went with it. So when you see these journeys and they're in your studio, and you're like, if he could do it, I could do it. Because he didn't know what he was doing. No one does. That's the truth. No one knows what they're doing. And when you learn that, that's when it clicks. That these people who you think have their shit together, pardon my French, and then you start working with them and you're like, holy crap, this company's doing 50 million revenue and they're not using a CRM, right? And you're like, holy crap. Or you're like, oh my God, like the stories that they just told me about how they hire people and they have no HR processes and they're running a $50 million revenue business. And that's when you're like, wow. If they could do it, I could do it. And what you see as a common pattern, it's consistency, is they just don't quit. They keep going. And as they keep going, inevitably the business just keeps growing, where other people chase and stop what they're doing too quickly. Like, oh, great, I'm going to do Amazon drop shipping. Oh, great, I'm going to be an Instagram influencer. Oh, great, I'm going to chase that. So people just keep chasing and chasing and chasing. They quit too early. So podcasting is that one thing that happened in my life that completely shifted my whole trajectory. So I love that we're doing a podcast that you asked me that question, because I have such a heart for podcasting. I have been one of the major booths at Podfest Expo 4 years in a row. We podcast live on an expo floor. So I actually am really connected to thousands of podcasters, but it really like touches my heart. And Owwll actually helps the podcasting community, because you call people and then find chemistry and then find a good podcast guest. So I hope you use it. Call my guests on the Shrimp Tank, right? They're all entrepreneurs, and say, hey, I saw you were on the Shrimp Tank. I would love to invite you on the podcast that Jason was just on, right? If Jason was on it, I should be on it, right? So kind of, I hope you use it for that same purpose. So podcasting will always be something that impacted my life.
Super insightful. You gave me homework as well, because I think that's definitely a great avenue and so many ideas. Thank you again, Jason, for coming. I think you prove that you don't need to go viral to grow. You just need to have that one-on-one conversation to start, and you have to build systems to scale trust and platforms that actually return attention. You know, this is what you've done.
Yes.
If this episode helped you reframe how you think about influence, you can go check out Owwll, OWWWL.com. I'll put it in the description, and follow. There you go. Wow. There you go. All the people that you can talk to. And also follow Jason at the Jason Hill. And I find your advice is not just insightful, but it's actually very repeatable. So thank you again for coming to the show.
Absolutely. And I'll just add a couple handles on there. It's the Jason R. Hill personal accounts, at Owwll app on all socials for our mobile app, of course, and then at Shrimp Tank Boca on there. And of course, just go to Google. You'll find it all as well. Thank you so much for having me on. Enjoy the experience.
Pleasure. You're always welcome. Thank you again.
Absolutely.